this is a great get for the show. We got Dr. Joyce DeJong, and believe it or not, we go back almost 20 years. And now you're head of the DO school.
I am.
Former forensic pathologist in Kalamazoo and
in Lansing,
in Lansing and
I'm
Muskegon.
still a forensic pathologist.
Do they call it a forensic pathologist, or are you the ME?
No, so a forensic pathologist is my medical specialty, like
Right.
cardiologist or
Right.
gastroenterologist, forensic pathologist. But the medical examiner is a county-appointed
Right.
position. In Michigan, it's county-appointed.
Right, and there's a lot of history on whether it should be a ME or a
Coroner.
coroner, right?
Right.
And different states have different
They do.
titles, right?
They
There's a
do.
whole history on that.
There is. People have written books about it if you're
And
trouble sleeping.
so you've been head of the DO school for approximately, what, a year and a half?
A little over a year.
Okay.
Yeah, I started a year ago in February.
And, you're a doctor, and you obviously went to med school, but I would assume that it's kind of a different path for you from what you were used to.
It's very different from what I was used to.
Right.
Right. Yeah. And for me, I think in general, the biggest hurdle I had to get over was that before I was an expert. I knew.
Right.
I knew my business. If I didn't know, it made it a really interesting day because that meant there was something new and different and challenging. But as the dean of the College of Osteopathic Medicine at Michigan State, I'm really not the expert in anything. I'm there. It's all about your leadership, right? So
Well, right. I mean, you're trying to teach people to become doctors, and
Right.
you're a doctor. I mean,
right, yeah. There was a certain requirement there. Like they could maybe put you in charge of it and see how you did. You'd probably do okay.
What do you think so far after a year?
Number one, I love working at the university. I really, it's big and complicated, and I learn new things every day. But I work with great people, mostly, and So overall, it's great. We have, as you know, we have a new president who's great to work with.
I have an opinion about him. But,
Do you? Okay. All right. Is that something you want to share now?
I tell this to everybody. I think he's great.
Okay.
I do like him a lot, and he's very personable. And for some reason, when we're in the same circle, he's always very gracious and talks to me. And I think it's because of Chris Abood and Chris Abood's affiliation with all good things. And so I get that play, but I really think hopefully he can lead us in the right direction.
He's probably not just being great with you because of Chris Abood. He's kind of that way even when you're and Chris aren't around or whatever. I mean, he's just a genuine person.
He's very, very easy to talk to. I mean, you get people who are on the academic side who, in that capacity, and they often talk in a sort of a high intellect, and he seems very matter of fact and easygoing and sort of can relate to people, which I think is important. And so far, I mean, I think he's done a good job with maybe keeping our board out of the newspaper.
Well, and the board's probably doing a good job of that themselves.
Yeah.
It just it feels like there's, just on campus, there's a lot of positive energy, and
That's important.
yeah, people want to. We've had some dark years here at MSU, and it's really great to be emerging from that and blossoming.
Big
like a flower.
institution. Even in the dark days, they had a lot of good things going on.
Oh, absolutely.
But it's a big institution, and obviously, but really, so you. I know a little bit about your past, and quite frankly, in 2006, I had an extensive dossier on you. Like because I had to cross-examine you in 2006, and so it was something I had never done before, and I had all kinds of stuff. And I know that you went to undergrad at Grand Valley?
Grand Valley, yes.
And then Michigan State.
Michigan State's DO program.
DO program. Where did you go to high school?
I went to to Grand Rapids South Christian. That's where I graduated. But
Okay.
I went for a couple years to Byron Center High School, and then I switched. I was always going to be a lawyer. That was my life dream.
That's what our top research people said is,
Right. Yeah, that was the plan. I was on the high school debate team, and they had a better budget at this other high school at South Christian, and they went to more tournaments, and I would be able to do more high school debate stuff. So I transferred to be on their debate team. Yeah.
And tell me, because I don't know this, siblings?
Yeah, I have one older sister. She's 5 years older. She's a nurse, and I have two brothers. They're identical twins, and they're a few years older than me. So I'm the youngest.
You're like
I'm the baby of the family.
Yeah, the sort of spoiled brat.
Yeah.
Somebody who excels at everything, probably.
You know, when you cross-examined me that time, you even were asking me about my fishing and where I like to fish, and had I been to the place in Canada lately. Which
I had a lot of.
You had everything, yeah.
You graduate from Michigan State, and then do you go to Emory?
No, Emory was a little later. I did a 1-year internship in Grand Rapids, which was kind of what we did back then. Everybody did a 1-year internship. And then I did my pathology residency, which was through Michigan State, but it was in Grand Rapids.
When did you decide you wanted to become a forensic pathologist as opposed to any other specialty you could have gotten through the DO school?
Mm-hmm. So you could do anything out of the DO school, but I had started working in a hospital laboratory when I was in high school. So I was a junior in high school and needed a job. So I was working at first as a high school, as the laboratory secretary. That was the name of my job. And I had to be there at 5 p.m., work 5 to 9. And we didn't have computers back then, so you had to bring paper results around. So, so I started doing that. And then I was still in high school, and they needed a weekend autopsy assistant. And I thought, well, I can do that. So now we don't let high school students in the morgue, but I was working and getting paid back then. And so when it came time to pick my specialty, I just felt most at home in a lab, in the hospital lab.
Wow.
Yeah.
Around dead bodies.
Well, that's never, they don't frighten me as much as the living ones.
So tell me, post-medical school, what is that commitment to become a forensic pathologist, board certified?
Yeah, well, after med school, it's typically 4 to 5 years of residency. And then, so after I did my residency, then I went to Emory and did my forensic pathology training. So it's generally typically about 5 years after med school. So undergrad 4 years, med school 4 years, and then another 5.
So if you're listening to this, people say, well, what's a forensic pathologist? Baden is a forensic pathologist, right?
Michael Baden,
right.
Yes.
And he was part of the OJ team.
I believe so, yeah. I didn't follow that as carefully as maybe you did.
And Cyril Weck is
Cyril Wecht. He died last year.
Yeah, and he was most known maybe for the single bullet theory and the JFK. So he examined the body and drew conclusions as to the cause and manner of death, and maybe single bullet theory.
Yeah, I don't know if he examined the body. I think he examined the photos. Right?
Okay.
Yeah. The materials.
But he's a forensic pathologist.
He is. Yes.
Quincy was he a forensic?
Quincy was a forensic pathologist, right? If you're old enough to remember Quincy.
Right. Mm-hmm. So, in the context and, wanting to be a lawyer, if you become a forensic pathologist, they're somewhat related.
It's probably about as close as you can get to being a lawyer.
Without being
a lawyer.
Right.
Now, Cyril Wecht, he was a lawyer as well.
Yeah, Pittsburgh guy.
Mm-hmm. He was.
And so
his son-in-law works for the president, Cyril Wecht's son-in-law.
Really? Mm-hmm. I spoke to him on the phone a few times, some of my cases, and Michael Baden.
Okay, yeah.
Some of them. I think the Peterson case would have been one of them. But one of the significant things that you do as a forensic pathologist is you determine the cause and manner of death, right?
Yes. Right, and that's something that's required for death certificates.
Right. And so as the ME, you're signing off on those, I assume.
Yes,
And not everybody gets an autopsy. Is
that's
that
correct.
fair?
That's fair, yes.
And so, if it's a 90-year-old person who goes to bed and doesn't wake up, and there doesn't appear to be any suspicious
Right.
reasons, are we doing an autopsy on that person?
That would be most unlikely. Now and then you'll get a family member that wants one. They just want to know what happened, and so they'll ask for that privately.
Right.
And so we'll do those for them.
Right.
But by and large, the medical examiner, it would be most unlikely to order.
And this is there's 5 manners of death, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about this again, aren't we?
Well, I mean,
Can you determine the manner of death if you don't know the cause?
man,
Is that where we're going?
Ricky Allen.
That's
we
it.
can skip over it, but I mean, the thing is that I look back, I didn't have the experience. I wasn't good enough, but and we'll get into it. But the 5 manners of death are
They are natural, which most deaths, fortunately, are natural. Accidents,
Right.
where something else, you're in a car accident or something, or you fell down the stairs and you died, you tripped. Those are all accidents. Suicides, all right, where someone intends to cause self-harm and they die. And then the homicide, where another person has a volitional act that results in your death.
and then is that 4?
Oh, and then the number 5 is undetermined. Yeah,
Undetermined.
Yeah, or actually, in Michigan, we're the only state where on the death certificate it reads indeterminate.
Undetermined.
But every other state in the union says undetermined.
Right. And so as a manner of death, you have to say one of the 5, right?
Yes.
And generally, in order to make that determination, you need to know the cause of death.
Well,
Generally,
you do, yeah. But manner of death is really largely determined by circumstances. So if someone dies of a gunshot wound to the head, and that's all you know, you're not going to be able to say is that you can rule out natural, all right?
right. And you know the cause.
Now you know the cause.
Right.
You do know the cause here.
Right.
Sure. But you may not know if you don't know if it's an accident, a suicide, or a homicide.
And this is what is, I think, interesting is you can read everything in the books, right? And I'm sure it's helpful, but there is a certain amount of experience that allows you to ultimately render an opinion.
Yeah.
I mean, tell me how. I mean, we can talk about various cases, but sometimes it's looks like one thing and it's actually something else, right?
It certainly that can happen where it looks like one thing, but you want to have all the information available.
Right. And I mean, we can talk about how many autopsies do you think you've done?
I could actually come pretty close to the final number, but it's been thousands.
Tens of thousands, you think?
Oh, I don't know about that. If you're doing, I practiced for 25 years.
200 or 300 a year?
Yeah, something like that, for 25 years. So
and are you still doing autopsies?
Not right now. I miss it.
Do you?
Yeah, I miss the autopsy. I don't miss all the stuff that goes along with it.
And so I ran into you, and you were here in this building.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And you had
Stopped
said
by.
you just got back from D.C.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah, that's another thing I do. I'm part of the federal mass fatality response team. So when there is an incident that results in multiple fatalities, there is a federal team that responds to that to help with identifying the victims. That's our primary goal. Usually, it's pretty clear what the cause is.
right.
So
and that one.
It was a plane crash. Yeah, this is the one where the commercial airline it collided with a military helicopter, and everyone on both aircraft died. And so, but you need to figure out who's who and return them.
And so, was everybody in the plane? Is that how they? I mean,
at the end, were they all?
They must have found people's bodies someplace.
Oh, sure, yeah, right. They did. There was a pretty severe trauma, so there was some some disruption to the remains. There was some dismemberment of the bodies, so they weren't all intact, which can make it more challenging. That's common in a commercial aircraft crash.
I find it hard to believe that. I mean, not hard to believe, but it just seems like, because there were a lot of people on the plane, right? And everybody died?
Everybody did.
Yeah. And so, did you ever determine the cause of death?
Sure, yeah.
So I assume some people died from whatever, the blast, or...
Yeah.
Did some people die from drowning?
No. This is from the medical examiner. The chief medical examiner for Washington had said that. I don't want to speak on behalf of him, but my understanding is that the deaths were were trauma related.
From the crash?
Yeah, from the collision. Yes, they weren't drowning or hypothermia. Okay. They were deaths from they were blunt force injuries.
Okay.
And he classified them all as accidents.
Right. And probably a good case against the airline or somebody.
Yeah, well.
Interesting. It's interesting, right? Because
you think about it that way. I don't know.
we see plane crashes all the time. You wonder, whether somebody would survive, and people do survive plane crashes.
Sure. Yeah.
And in this one, I thought, well, they crashed in the water, and.
Yeah.
But if the helicopter strikes it at the right place, and there must have been
pretty violent collision. They're still going pretty fast too. So.
High temperature in the and so they were likely deceased before they hit the water.
I would, for the cases that I saw, I would think yes.
And so, as a forensic pathologist, are you then examining remains and determining DNA?
Well, my role in this was a little bit different than that, because the Washington, D.C. medical examiner, they have a wonderful office, and they have all kinds of bells and whistles. So our role was Francisco Diaz is the chief ME there, and he used to be in Wayne County, by the way. Where he was deputy chief. Anyway, but in order to identify people, you need to have materials to compare them to. So you need fingerprints or dental records or X-rays, anything that we can use to compare, and because otherwise all you know is what you have, or DNA, right? So
which most people don't have, right?
DNA.
I mean, we all have DNA, but
you can get it from parents or family members.
It's a little bit of work to get a sample DNA, right?
Well, it's not hard if you have the person who's dead, but even then, you just get if you get both parents or a couple of first-degree relatives, you can sort it out.
A toothbrush.
You can bring in a toothbrush, or as long as they weren't sharing it.
Right.
But yeah, so there were a fair number of DNA, and DNA is so fast now.
Was it?
Yeah. We used to have to wait weeks to get the results back from DNA, and now it's in minutes.
And I assume that was a high priority as well.
Absolutely. Sure. Yeah. Yeah, you want to move this along. The families are all there. They all come in.
And what takes you there? You're part of a mass casualty with the federal government?
Yeah, I'm a federal employee when I go. And I'm not speaking on behalf of the federal government.
Today.
Correct.
Right,
yeah.
Right,
and if I happen to say anything clever or something not so clever, it's not their fault.
We can edit it out. This is not supposed to be like a gotcha moment.
No, I didn't think so. They're just fussy about that.
Yeah, and you've done other mass
fatalities. Yeah. This is probably my 13th or 14th. I've been to a lot of them. So, yeah, 9/11 was one. I was on a military flight on 9/12. and went to New York, and then got moved to Pennsylvania. Hurricane Katrina, the earthquake in Haiti, that was like nothing I'd seen before. Just the damage in Haiti was remarkable.
What kind of mental strain does it take on you, or are you sort of just locked in when you go there? I mean,
yeah, we're pretty locked in. I know
911 was tough on everybody, but to actually be there, I mean,
yeah,
and in Pennsylvania, and
yeah, I wasn't in New York for very long, and got moved right away to Pennsylvania. I had worked a crash in Pennsylvania earlier, like within the year before, which there were 15 people who died in a plane crash. So kind of knew that team from that area, and they had requested me. So I flew. It was the first day that that commercial flights were back out open again. So I was flying over to Pennsylvania, and there I was right in the morgue and working and running the pathology section and DNA. So, but then with the DNA, it was taking longer because that's been a little while.
Right, that would have been
2001, wasn't it? Was it
24, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Years ago. So, yeah, different time flies.
Yeah. Amazing.
So,
so that's been part of my career that I keep doing. And fortunately, the university supports it. Yeah. Because I went to Asheville, North Carolina, too, before the Washington one, when there was a hurricane that went through. Yeah.
And a lot of people died there.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about the few cases we've had.
Okay.
Let's talk about
all right.
the good parts.
Okay.
Because I've sought your counsel out on a number of occasions, and you've been very generous with your time.
Yeah,
and we didn't
about
really
the truth.
We didn't really start out that way. I mean, it was a little rough go, and maybe we can talk about that.
Yeah, there were some. Now I laugh about some of it. But
it was a stressful.
But it was a tragic case. It was Ricky Holland.
For sure.
Yeah,
Ricky.
It's an 8-year-old.
That was 2006, and it was stressful for everybody, right? And in fact, we were on Mason courtroom, and you were in that back little conference room, and I find it sometimes better if I hate the person.
Oh, okay.
You know what I mean? Like, I'm going to cross-examine her and, blah, blah,
so
blah.
mean. Yeah.
And then I went back and started talking to you, and you're like, are you related to Chris Abood? And I was like, oh, Jesus.
Here we go. Yeah, why?
And you were really professional about it, and I don't remember. That must have been after I tried to hold you in contempt.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It was after that. And I remember when, well, there's more to this story, but I had to hire, or Sparrow Hospital hired a criminal defense attorney for me.
There you go.
Yeah, because of you. And which was all right. You were just doing your job, right? Everybody's entitled.
Well, now that we're here, we might as well just talk about it. So Ricky Holland goes missing like July 4th or 5th of 2005.
Yeah.
And it was a massive investigation,
search.
Right?
Trying to find Ricky. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and at that point, I'm not very involved yet.
7 years old.
Yep.
Adopted by Lisa and Tim Holland.
Tim.
And they live out in Williamston.
Right.
And there's all kinds of rumors, and the investigation lasts. It's better part of 6 months, I think, into the end of the year, and eventually I think if you ask Roy Halladay would say they were focused in on Tim and Lisa right from the get-go.
Yeah, pretty early.
And they didn't believe that Ricky had climbed out a window and
ran
away.
Blah,
blah, and never to be seen again. And post 2006, sometime in late 2005 or early 2006, what happened, and I don't know if you know this part, they actually accuse Tim of assaulting one of the other kids.
Oh, okay.
and because Ricky had several siblings, same mother, they were all foster kids, and they wanted to keep all the kids together. So Lisa and Tim got all the kids, and they bring Tim in for an interview. And Frank Mraz, do you remember Frank?
I don't remember
Frank is with the state police. He did that interview. God, I think he lied to him a little bit, but I'm not really sure because I was afraid to ask Frank. But basically said there was a spatula mark on the back of the younger brother's back, and that's when Tim said something about Lisa throwing a hairdryer into the shower when he was in the shower, and they charged her with felonious assault. And then shortly after that, Tim led everybody to the body out in southern Ingham County.
Right.
So the body was found in a pond in a bag.
And basically it was a garbage bag kind of thing.
Right, wrapped up, and
he was wearing a diaper.
Not too much. Not too much left at that point, right?
That's
That's not unusual. 7 months 6 or 7 months in a.
That would be what you expect.
What was the Todd Fenton statement? Skeletonized. It's skeletonized.
Yes.
Yeah. So anyway, we joke about it. It was tragic. It was very.
It was tragic.
Tragic. And so, the first thing we have to do in a criminal case is you run a preliminary exam, which was, I think, sometime in March, we ran a preliminary exam in which Mike Ferenczi, the sort of, at the time, was one of the lead, if not the leading, probably had prosecuted more homicides than any prosecutor in that office at the time. He was prosecuting the case, and Tim had Frank Reynolds and Scott Mertens, and Lisa had myself and Mike Nichols.
Right.
And I think Mike Ferenczi had Bill Crino as his sidekick. So we had in front of Judge Aquilina.
Right.
And because it was a homicide, right? And you and
Dr. Cienko?
I was going to say Seiko, but it's Cienko,
Yes, Cienko,
right?
yes.
He was the medical examiner, right?
He was. So I was the forensic pathologist, and he was the medical examiner.
Sparrow Hospital, and you determined, you did an autopsy, right?
Yes.
And you determined that it was a homicide.
Right. And the autopsy, though, was, we examined the remains, but part of the autopsy is examining any and all records you could find as well, and the investigative information and the circumstantial information, and I classified it as a homicide.
Right.
Yeah.
And
for public health purposes.
what's that mean?
Well, Is
that what the death certificate says?
It really is. It's for this whole thing started for public health. And so it gets hijacked by the lawyers.
Well, I mean.
Yeah. All right.
So when our really first encounter is Judge Aquilina issues a gag order on everybody.
She had not issued a gag order.
Oh.
She had not. So there's a little backstory.
Okay, we want the backstory.
We want the backstory. So Dr. Cienko, a man I greatly respect, and he was a 3-star general, and so in the reserves. And anyway, so Dr. Cienko said he liked to have press conferences, and he was going to have a press conference to talk about the cause and manner of death of Ricky. And
at the time, this was on the front page of the paper.
We still had paper newspapers, and it was front page above the fold every single day.
Ricky Holland was a big story, and it became even bigger when the body was found and covered by everybody.
So he was going to have a press conference, and I got a call from the prosecutor's office, and they said, "Could you go down there and be at the press conference so that, Dr. Cienko doesn't say too much, that we kind of, And I said at the time, I said, well, can't we get a gag order or something? I said, you're in the middle of the preliminary hearing. That we shouldn't be having press conferences. I actually disagreed with that. And they said, well, no, there are no gag orders. That's not happening. But would you just go and be there and just make sure that you're talking about generalities? So I said, all right. And this was our former prosecutor who left the office. Stuart Dunning said that. And I forget who his deputy chief was. Catherine? There was a woman that. Anyway, so I said, all right. And actually at the press conference, Stuart was sitting in the back along with his deputy chief. This was at the health department. But we do the press conference.
Right.
And I tried to keep it very general about how we make these determinations and not provide any specifics about the case. However, you didn't like it that there was a press conference.
I think she must have made a ruling on the bench or something because she show-caused you, I think.
She did. She did.
Yes.
Yeah.
We made it through the first hurdle.
Right, and then there were, I don't know if I thought you requested.
No,
the show
we did. We requested it, but she signed an order for you to appear.
Yep.
And Dr. Seiko.
Yes.
Seiko, and show cause why you shouldn't be held in contempt because she had and I don't.
Yeah.
I don't think if you asked, and I've been in front of Judge Aquilino a number of times. That's sort of her modus operandi on high-profile cases is to issue a gag order. She did it on Nassar, and she's done it on other cases.
Right. She hadn't issued one yet on this.
Well, that could be the reason why.
She did right afterwards. Yeah, she did.
Right.
And then she went on Nancy Grace that night. But anyway.
Yeah, well, that was my birthday.
Oh well.
There you go.
There you go. But we had the. So Sparrow then hired a criminal defense attorney, and so we're there at the courtroom. I have not testified yet.
Right.
And he said to me, I plan to get pretty aggressive with this, okay? And I said, okay. I said, keep in mind, I have no bias here. I'm not biased one way or the other. I don't want to appear as if I'm somehow now upset with the defense attorneys or whatever, because I really have always tried to maintain that when I go into court.
Right.
I don't care who asks the questions, the answer should be the same. I'm not there on behalf of one or the other, right? And so he's like, okay, well, then he requested that whatever hearing occurred, that it be done in chambers. So you guys
I think it was Bill Schultz.
It could be that name.
I think it was Bill
He was
Schultz.
very good.
He was a kind of aggressive, but it's like, why?
Yeah, why not?
I mean, come on, Bill. I mean, I'm not going to be intimidated. I mean, you have a good act, but I could see it was like.
Yeah. Well, he was kind of.
But you were a good client too. I mean, you're going to hold her in contempt. I mean, he.
Yeah, it's easy. Yeah. Right. So she had to apologize for some things that were said about Dr. Shenko and I.
Yeah, I mean, you weren't held in contempt, but it was sort of it set the tone for until Nancy Grace wanted to do. Was it Nancy Grace?
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't go on. I told.
There's a gag order, but yeah.
I told Mike Nichols go ahead and do this.
Did he do it?
Mike did, and Judge Aquilina did, and I can't remember. I don't think Mike Ferenczi did, but.
Yeah.
It was interesting. Interesting. But
anyway,
so that's how we started out.
That is how we started out. But then when you came in and talked to me in the little conference room, I was not mean to you. I was like, hey, dude. Like,
but I mean, that's a case that,
we kind of put that specific
I
want to add
aside.
one other little story that I remember pretty clearly from that sitting out there when you guys are back in chambers. The deputy, the undersheriff came up to me, and he's like, "Hey, Dr. DeJong, I got a couple questions for you." I'm like, "Oh, okay."
Matt Meyer?
I think so.
Yeah,
Matt Meyer. He came up and he very seriously had a little notebook, and he was writing. He said, "I just got a couple questions for you." And he said, "Look, if the judge decides to keep you here overnight, I'm just wondering, like, do you want to have like a cell by yourself?" He goes, "Or do you want a roommate?" And I said, I think I want to be by myself. He's like, okay. And he writes that down. And then he said, now, he said, you could have a view like of the parking lot. So he was coming and going,
Right.
or you could have so he's giving me, and I'm looking at him and I said, I guess the parking lot. And then he asked me what color of a jail uniform
What
I'd want. Do I want orange or mauve? And then he burst out laughing, and I thought he was 100% serious. Like I was about to get taken into custody.
That's funny.
That was pretty funny.
Yeah, that is. We do that all the time.
Yeah.
Well, it was just a civil infraction, but the judge wants you to do 3 days.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Anyway, okay.
so
All right. So
in
that's how it
that
started.
case, that case, and this is the mistake I made. I think that was definitely a winnable case from my perspective, but case that I probably lost. But you couldn't tell the cause of death, right? Because
Right. We were
There
dealing with
wasn't-
we were dealing with a skeleton without any.
without like a known trauma to the skull or a bullet hole or something like that.
Didn't have that. Right.
Right.
We had a lot of other information.
Right.
That made it that demonstrated poor care of Ricky. So
Yeah,
even if it was like if
maybe.
it was well, if
You
it
were- yeah.
okay.
But what my point that I would like to talk about is when you look at the Casey Anthony case, are you familiar with that at all?
The Florida.
Yeah, so they knew the baby had died, but they couldn't determine the cause of death.
Yeah.
And she got acquitted.
Yeah.
And I think my mistake in that case, not that this is supposed to be about me, is that we didn't hire a counter expert. We needed a forensic. I mean, I don't know that even would have made a difference, even that, because there were the overwhelming sentiment in the community was they didn't like either one of the people. But and you determined that it was a homicide, and you did a lot of research to show failure to thrive.
Yeah, that was an interesting thing.
And you also, you got a number of different stories from Tim. I don't know if you remember those. At one time, he claimed that Lisa grabbed Ricky out of bed and hammered her head, and there was blood all over the hallway. And
yeah, that was what was interesting about that was the only time in my entire career where they there was testimony given that said that she had the head trauma resulted in his death.
right,
Okay, so this is during the trial now with Judge. Who was the judge for the
Vanderfield.
Yeah, Paula Manderfield. So she gets me back somehow. I don't know if I went back on the stand, but said I may had gone back on the stand, and she asked, well, now that there's been factual testimony that's been given that he had head trauma and that's why he died, if that is determined, the court has determined that that's true, and so can you change the cause of death based on that information? And it was a really weird
Complicated
kind of thing.
I think what happened is we challenged whether you could render an opinion under Dalbert on failure to thrive, and so I think you did ultimately testify two times, because there was somebody from U of M that came in and testified, and then you testified, and we said that's basically hocus pocus. And
That's what you thought, but
yeah. And I mean, we lost, but that was our theory, and I
think what was interesting is that Ricky went to he he was brought to healthcare providers quite a bit.
Right.
Right. There were a lot of visits,
Right.
which also makes you think they knew the mechanism. Like if somebody's not doing well, you know what to do, right?
Right.
You take them to the ER or whatever. Because I remember you asking me, what if he had an allergy to bees and he got stung by a bee and he died? And like, would I be able to determine that? You had some scenarios that I remember. It's interesting, right, how long you remember these things, because it was sort of a big. But Ricky had been gaining weight, and then but going to the doctors, then his weight started like staying the same, and then it starts dropping.
Right.
And my point was that when you're a 7 or 8 year old boy, you should not be dropping in weight, right? You should continue to gain weight. I never said why his weight was dropping. I said, I don't know, maybe he had hyperthyroidism. Maybe he
could have been a lot of
had a
different
malabsorption. I have no idea why. Like, I can't tell from the records why. But there was other testimony about withholding food and taping them to the refrigerator and
Ultimately, that was, there were a couple theories, but ultimately it was, it resulted in a conviction, obviously. And Tim Holland pled guilty in second degree and got 38 years, I think, or something like that. He could be close to getting out, and Lisa we went all the way to trial. And some of the other things that were critical in the case were there was a handwritten note in the jail that was difficult, and I think that was also a case where a jailmate could have been your future, could have been a potential roommate of yours.
Mine,
Crystal Mountain stole her police reports, and so she then claimed that Lisa made a confession, and it was a big lesson for me because in big cases like that, I stopped giving the clients the police reports because of the incentive for somebody to steal those reports and then sort of have an inside scoop to say, this is what the defendant told me. I mean, it was...
Yeah, they might share it with their cellmates.
Well, inside confession, saying somebody confessed to you has validity if you know the details.
Okay.
And so the person may never make the confession, but if you've read all the police reports, then you can say, this is what they told me, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
I don't know that ultimately Crystal Mountain was a deciding factor. I think what the handwritten notes were.
From our perspective as the medical examiners, in my opinion, and you get interested in a case, but I really don't have a bias one way or the other. I mean, I wouldn't have felt like...
You're not supposed to.
Yeah,
but you work hard on a case, and you have a bias towards your, you want to keep an open mind, right?
Well, sure, yeah, but I don't get any more money. It's actually the only time we get paid is when we work for a defense lawyer, right?
Yeah.
That's wrong. That shouldn't happen.
But but sometimes you get high. I mean, I've consulted you on civil cases. Mm-hmm. I had a case years ago where a woman walked outside. She was in an adult foster care and walks outside and froze to death. Yeah. And I came to talk to you about what that would be like. It was the cause and manner of death were not in dispute. That would be
like hypothermia accident.
Yeah, that would be an accident or almost not natural though, right? Or
not natural. It would be an accident.
Accidental death, right? Mm-hmm. Right. But there is, in the civil world, how long did they live, and what was that like, and how long before they would
succumb to this, and
and so you helped me on that case. You also helped me, and I think you were on the case, but I came and consulted with you on Shamari Milton. I don't know if you remember that case, but even in a homicide, it's still a homicide, even if it's self-defense.
Sure.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
Because self-defense is still an intentional act.
Mm-hmm. Right? Well, when law enforcement, if they shoot someone, it's a homicide.
But it's justified.
Well, that's a legal determination.
That's a legal determination,
right. I just say, no, did you intend to shoot that guy? Yeah. Did you intend to kill him? Sure did.
Right.
Well, we call that a homicide.
Right. And
whether they're going to prosecute you is another
And
story.
you still do the autopsy on those cases,
Oh,
right?
absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
So you determine
Right.
The
I
man-
mean, because there's, especially depending on the circumstances, there's a lot of questions about. Those are essentially like a death in custody, where you really want those autopsies actually take a little longer. You're just careful to make sure that, because
so-
it's oftentimes to prove the negatives, right? Like, no,
Right.
he wasn't beaten first.
He didn't die of a heart attack before.
Or he wasn't beaten about his head with a billy club and then shot, or,
Right, right.
like the only thing we found was this, yeah.
Right.
Or he was, sometimes
Right,
we'll find
right.
those.
Yeah, so Shamari Milton was a case. I'm almost certain you were on this case. He was in Capitol Commons with a girlfriend, and he called another girl. He was blind, had been shot in the head,
I sort of remember this.
and he walked outside to the parking lot, and the first girlfriend grabbed all the knives in the kitchen and came down and started throwing knives at him.
Okay.
And
I shouldn't laugh. That's not funny.
no, and he somehow realized she was throwing knives at him, and he pulled out a gun and shot her twice.
Yeah.
And so even though you were called by the prosecution, you did not opine. Although I think you did help me that, this knife could have caused death. This was
Sure.
a serious threat, the knife throwing part. And ultimately, Mike Cheltenham, I'm sure you know that
Yeah, I
name.
know Mike, yeah.
Mike. So Mike prosecuted it. The jury came back not guilty on the homicide, convicted him of felon in possession of a firearm.
Oh.
Manorfield sent him to prison because he had priors, and the bullet that was in his brain that caused him to be blind moved, and he died in prison.
Oh.
So it's like,
Wow.
I mean, it's like a hollow victory.
Yeah.
And ultimately, after that case, I think the Michigan Supreme Court came down and said even a felon has a right to possess a firearm if it's self-defense.
Oh, okay.
So it was like, I wanted to, but
Well, I think, too, in those, this could be something that's educational for other attorneys, but I think that they should, if they're going to go and they're going into trial with a homicide, if you're the defense attorney, you should make an appointment to go talk to the forensic pathologist, to the medical examiner.
I've always done that, and obviously you haven't been on every homicide
Right.
case I've done, but Hansma,
Yeah.
was his name Kurt?
No, Patrick Hansman.
Patrick Hansma.
Yeah.
I've met with him several times on several cases, most of them gory, and he seems to have a delivery on the gore that is a little off-putting. Let's put
Okay.
it that.
All right. Yeah.
But he's been very generous with his time.
Yeah, I think anybody would be. If they're not, that's
Very generous.
it's actually
with
a
this.
problem. It sort of
Yeah.
violates kind of our ethics.
We did a case with him, and I think it was 27 hatch wounds with a camp axe,
Oh, wow.
and he had everyone memorized. 1, 2, 3, 4,
He would,
5.
yeah.
I mean, it was just like a little. But he's been very generous, and it's very educational. And then, so I know I consulted with you on the outside where the woman froze outside, but I 100%
Yeah,
consulted with you on Drew Peterson, didn't I?
you did. Yeah, briefly. Yeah.
I mean, you were extremely helpful, and just so it's clear, Kathy Savio died in a bathroom, which is not unusual, right?
People die in the bathroom. They
Right,
die all over the place.
And they slip and fall.
They
and
can,
the
yeah.
bathroom is,
It's a dangerous place.
right. And she actually died. I think it was March 2nd weekend. I know that because it was my birthday. I just remember
Again, your
that
birthday.
day. My birthday.
It's like
Yeah, you remember that day.
Right, Nancy Grace show was on your birthday, and now
But, that death was called indeterminate.
or undetermined. That
Undetermined
was
in
Illinois.
Illinois, right? And so, in that case, The fourth wife, Stacy Peterson, goes missing.
Right.
And they went and exhumed the body of Kathleen Savio.
Right.
And then they changed the manner of death to homicide. Mm-hmm. And, that seems unusual. But there is a theory behind it, right? I think there's a theory.
Okay.
The theory being, if you have one baby that dies, right? It could be SIDS. If you have two babies, it's undetermined. If you have three babies,
it's a homicide.
all three are homicides. All three are
homicides. And only they went back, that was like one of the original descriptions of SIDS, and they went back and found that those kids had actually some kind of genetic abnormality.
Right. But I mean, there was a theory behind it. And I don't know that they actually.
That wouldn't be a reason
change the cause or manner of death, but they did determine it was.
It'd be interesting to know if they actually amended the death certificate to reflect
as
that,
opposed to just the autopsy.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's what's the official document say,
right?
So,
and we consulted a number, including you. We consulted a number of forensic pathologists. I think so I learned from.
Others, yeah.
The Ricky Holland case, you can't, this whole case turns on the pathologist, right?
Yeah.
So I called everybody. Mm-hmm. I called Cyril, I called Michael Bodden, I talked to you, I talked to
Jeff Jensen.
Right? He's amazing.
He's a great.
He taught me a ton, but we also talked to Spitz.
Okay, Werner.
The son.
The son is Dan.
Daniel Spitz.
Okay.
And he was generous with his time. So I didn't end up trying that case. And here's what happened. Almost all of them on the Drew Peterson case had already gone into the media and called it a homicide.
Oh.
You know what I mean?
Wow.
So unless you did your research,
you don't know. They're going to pull that out and say,
and all of a sudden, didn't you call this a homicide?
Yeah.
But you
roll the tape.
But the thing that's interesting about the manner of death is it's both science and common sense, right?
Yes.
And it's the science that you need the help with, right? As a lawyer.
Sure, exactly. Right? And then the
anybody can come up with their manner once they know the science. And then the question is are there alternative scientific theory, right?
Sure. There's a little bit of a struggle to come up with, if you think about it. Like, let's go back to Ricky, where he's found in a garbage bag, dumped alongside the road with all this history.
Well, you can eliminate accident, right?
Well,
likely.
Well, I mean, I don't think, could it be a suicide? Well, could it be an accident? Like, it's like,
right.
At what point do you
could
just
it have been an accident?
Like, is this
that the parents panicked and decided post-death to cover it up? Right.
Put him in a trash bag and dump alongside the road and call the police and say he'd run away.
Right.
Yeah. Then these are parents who knew how to use the medical system too. Yeah.
Right.
But sure, and if that's what the jury, this was my opinion.
Right. But it's there's a significant amount of you can develop a theory. I mean, the interesting case that we did, I don't know if you remember this one. It was a Brannigan brothers.
Oh boy, I think went to trial how many times?
Twice. I didn't try the case. I did the prelim, and my client was Austin Smith, and there was another client.
There were like a bunch of clients.
Two defendants mainly.
Okay.
And one of them was convicted, and the other one was, I think, 2 hung juries by Mike Hocking. But the science of it was, he was trying to get in the bar. There was some, mouthing going back and forth. They sort of walk down to the corner, and he gets hit in the head. And there was, and I always want to remember what you called it, but the injury in the brain, it's sort of, I don't
there was like coup and contra coup.
Yes, coup and contra coup.
Yeah, we went through all of that.
Yeah, which means, tell me what that means.
Well, a contra coup injury, that you're only talking about the brain itself, all right? And the brain will actually, just like your skin, you can get a bruise on your brain. So if you fall backwards, all right, you're falling, free fall, hit the back of your head, you're going to have bruises on your brain in the front, like up behind your forehead and in those regions, because it moves forward and slams into the front of your head. That's contra coup. So a coup injury is where somebody takes a pipe and hits your head, and then the bruise to the brain
is trauma.
These are both blunt force, falling and hitting the ground, but it's where the injury is. So it's directly beneath that. Not everybody reads the textbooks when they get injured, but
Bill Crino tried that case.
Yeah, he probably did.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, I remember going to court quite a bit on that because there were hung juries and we'd go back and the one that. Yeah.
I'm certain I talked to you about it, and we went back and forth, and I can't remember the significance today about your opinion, but we called in Chris Abood's partner.
Okay, yeah.
As an expert, and he testified at the preliminary exam, and I think it was on the coup and contra coup, and whether the injury could have been a result of a fall or a blunt force trauma, or not fall is a blunt force trauma, but an intentional act versus a fall.
There was something else in there where they said don't mess with the Brannigan brothers bouncers.
There was something. Yeah. There was some heated exchange, but that was an interesting case, and you were really generous. And it seems like, why leave all that and go? I mean,
why leave all that? Why
leave? I mean, you get to walk into court, and you get to sort of be like you're sort of like Kirk Gibson, in the bottom of the ninth, getting to hit the home run, right? And quite frankly, it's hard to beat you up on cross-examination. I don't know if that's ever happened. I just try to, get sort of a break even with you.
I would say you would give me a run for my money.
I mean, that's a nice compliment, but yeah. But why leave all that and then go
to be the dean of a college of osteopathic medicine?
Yes.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So why? So partly, and this is going to be so boring for your show here.
Why?
Okay.
No.
Well, because my whole career has been investigating deaths, and most of our deaths are not these dramatic homicides like what we had in this year. Excuse me. But I got tired of documenting why people died. And so often it's because our healthcare system's horrible. We don't have enough doctors. They're not in the right places. They all want to be neurosurgeons. How many neurosurgeons do we really need, right? You need, have you tried to make... I'm sorry. I'm just picking on that.
Yeah,
I'm just picking on that because of your...
You need one good one, usually.
You need one, right? Yeah. So, but it was more about this... I just wanted to try and do something to make the world a better place, to try and expand healthcare and see what I could do.
And not that, but a lot of people just decide, hey, I'm gonna hang it up and whatever. I talked to Joyce DeJong, who I'm sure was on the show, and I keep telling her, what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? What are you gonna, and she's like, I'm going to travel. I'm going to, and you're sort of.
Wait, who was on the show? Oh, it wasn't Joyce DeJong.
No, I'm sorry, Joyce Dragonchuk.
Joyce Dragonchuk. Yeah, what's she going to do?
She's going to vacation and travel and I'm just wondering, you got a second act.
I know. Here I am. Well, I was kind of on that retirement path, and then this opportunity opened up. And I thought, well, I'll throw my hat in the ring. But I thought, if I'm going to throw my hat in the ring, I'm going to go all out. I want that job, and I ended up getting it.
Right.
So that was exciting.
And there, you can do a lot of good.
I can do a lot of good. I'm
Right.
still kind of in the mix. It's a different job. I still get I still go to court because
There
I
you
have a
go.
bunch of old homicides, and with that
Oh, right.
that Smith thing, Smith versus Arizona, they will take, the forensic pathologists have to come back.
Right.
I don't know what they're going to do when we die. Like, that's a thing.
They'll redo the autopsy.
I've had to do that before.
Yeah.
For pathologists that have died, I've had prosecutors that required us to exhume the body and do another autopsy 15 years later.
We had Sherry Jones on the show, and she was talking about some of the cold cases.
Oh, yeah.
So, we're familiar with that.
Yeah. But anyway, those are always interesting, those exhumations. But
You're not going to believe this.
what?
1 hour's up.
Oh, now what do we do?
Listen,
Thank you very much.
This was great. This was great. Amazing. We'll have to get you back on.